So, hey guys, are you frustrated with where you're at right now? Maybe stunted in your progress? Well, if you are, I want to recommend a place for you to go called Growth Day. growthday.com/ed. It is the #1 personal development app on the planet. It's got all kinds of high performance techniques in there, courses, accountability, journaling, live speeches from some of the top influencers in the world, including me. It's an overall environment to change your life. growthday.com/ed.
The world is not like Shark Tank. Like you just said, the world is not 8 minutes of hi sharks and then you either leave with a deal or not. You almost never leave with a deal when you first meet somebody. And when you are talking to them, what's in it for the person you're talking to, not you.
It's interesting how often I'm asked by parents how to build a child's confidence if only they find something they're really engaged in. I believe parents can very much help children find their thing by getting them in the habit, trying things, failing, and getting back up.
If I met you young, I'm just curious, would I have known this was going to happen for you? I mean, was there something about you that had I met you as a young man that would have indicated all of this would happen for you?
You know, it depends on the time you met me during my life. You know, at the time when I was super naive and I thought it was just easy, you would have met me, I'd have been like, not a problem. And then that would have been probably around 16 or 17. I think that's when, you know, they like to induct people into the armed forces because that's the smartest and the dumbest time of your life. And at that time, I thought I would have been it. And then right around 21, 22, I realized that I took that 1 year off of school, off of college, to pursue other things. That 1 year became forever. I laughed at all the other kids who searched a higher education. And around 22, 23, I was broke as a waiter in Red Lobster. And all those kids that I laughed at was coming back from college. And I said, maybe I'm the idiot. So it all depends on the time that you met me in life and how naive I was. And if life had kicked me in the teeth properly the way it should have.
The thing I noticed when we met, the reason I ask you that is that, and we'll go to your little bit, about your upbringing a little bit. But when I met you, one thing that struck me, and we've both met lots of people, is your personal presence. So I've heard you say before, I'm short, I'm black, and I'm dyslexic, and that's, you've described yourself that way. When I met you, I met a man with a ton of personal presence, almost bordering on almost intimidating, but certainly a lot of confidence. That's what I ask. Have you always had that? Or is that something you developed as you became more successful? Or were you conscious, like, I need to develop this air of confidence about me? Because all these entrepreneurs are listening to this. And one of the things that I think a lot of them lack is just some personal presence and self-confidence. Did you always have it or did you work on it? I think it was a learned trait, and being the short black or whatever. But let's just say in my neighborhood, I was short. A lot of kids, at that time were tough and they were drug dealers or fighters. I never really knew how to fight really well. Could I hold my own? Yes, but there's always somebody with a bigger wallet, bigger winky, and a bigger fist than you in the world. And I always realized that. I think that it was then when I was able to manipulate my surroundings by knowing that the bigger kids respected me because I was smart, or because some of the other cool kids or the drug dealer friends of mine respected me because I had a moral standard. And I said, listen, if you got something in the car and I know we're good friends, just tell me to get out, man. Don't put me in that situation. And as I started to, gain respect in various different areas for various different people, I found that I gained the confidence to walk into a room and know that I'm all I got, right? And I'm not going to overplay or disrespect you. And I never played smarter than I was. So I love, when you and I, when we speak to colleges or VCs or whoever, it's a lot of people in the room often with the big brains, especially when I speak at big, huge schools. Mm-hmm. I make sure I go in the room and I say, listen, I'm only going to tell you my story, and this is my story, and this is what I have retained from my story. However, the people here, the professors, they can teach me a lot of things on a PhD level. And I don't even want to take away from them because I value what they do. And then all of a sudden you see the professor sitting up in the audience, looking around because they know that I could have came in and said, well, I'm Mr. So forth and so on, and this is the way it is. Mm-hmm. And so when I walk into a room, I appreciate the other person's positioning. I know where I stand, and I think that makes us, and I try to bring that other person up if they're not feeling like they're there. I think that's what gives me the confidence, because I know I'm exuberant in confidence as well as I'm trying to bring the confidence out of the person in the world, of the room, and I respect them. And I hopefully that is what you were witnessing. Yeah, I did. When people have asked me about it, I've described it. And I think there's this balance with successful entrepreneurs. Obviously, they have to have a great idea. They have to be able to execute. They have a really unique balance that I see in you of really a presence and a self-confidence, yet humility. to learn and to grow and to be open. You seem to have like that major combination. Go back to the upbringing, just because I want people to understand you're one of the most well-known, obviously because of Shark Tank, entrepreneurs too. But like you've written 5 books, and but are you legitimately dyslexic? Like,
yeah.
How's that impacted you as an entrepreneur? I mean, how'd you write books doing that?
Well, believe it or not, eight out of the 12 sharks are dyslexic. So Richard Branson, myself, Kevin O'Leary, Barbara, I think Rohan, and 2 others that don't come to mind at the moment. So it's fascinating. And I didn't really find out that I was dyslexic till years on in life. I didn't find out I was dyslexic until two-way pagers came out, because you got to remember, as a dyslexic kid, I'd write a love note or I write a letter to my mom. My mother, Daymond, hey, and she'll say, hey, you need to fix this. I write it to my teacher. She sends back the really nice, D-. And I write a love letter to my girlfriend. She just leaves me, and I never knew why. She didn't understand what the hell I was saying, right? But when communication started to come out to write to other people, emails and two-way pages, I would start sending stuff out. And I probably had just started getting a staff at the time, and people would start getting those emails going or two-way pages going, and a couple of them would say, hey, D, you know this? Or if it was a really angry one to somebody, they'd write back, you dumb motherfucker, you know what you sent me? So either way, I started to understand that there was an issue there. And then I went and got tested and realized that I had dyslexia. But when I reflect on growing up as a child with dyslexia, I think the gift of dyslexia is the fact that if I had read a book and I didn't retain anything as much as I should, I'd read it 10 times to make sure I retain things. I would also go out and try to execute things that it said to do, because I wasn't certain if I retained it the right way. I also veered away from school from history and English, but I really loved math and science, and started trying to build the areas I was good at, numbers, and various other things. So listen, it is what I was born with. 20% of the world is dyslexic. 7 presidents were dyslexic. Einstein was dyslexic, and 85% of professional chefs are, and over 40% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic. So I don't think it's a problem. I think it's just a different form of absorbing information.
Wow. I had no idea that was the data. The reason I go there is I think we're all really aware of our deficiencies. Like for me, it's one of the things you said. I walk into most rooms and I know I don't have the highest IQ in the room, but I didn't allow that thing I was aware of that was one of my deficiencies to make me believe I couldn't be successful or win. I think a lot of people listen to this. They're like, well, yeah, y'all winning, but you don't know this thing about me. Like I've got this divorce, or I had this bankruptcy, or I'm dyslexic, or, my dad's been locked up, or whatever the thing is. And they start using that thing as the thing in their mind that will cause them not to succeed. And then I'm reading about you because I wanted to do this justice, because I have such respect for who you are and also your message. When I heard you talk, I'm like, I love what he has to say. So you're building FUBU. You literally, because I want entrepreneurs to hear this, because in COVID, this is happening a lot. You had to shut it down a couple times.
Yeah.
I mean, I want everyone to understand this. Take us through that a little bit, because I think most people think it's over, game closed, doors shut, I'm out. Well, that didn't just happen once with you, right?
Correct. So I shut it down 3 times from 89 to 92. It did not happen once, but I was always able to recover from the shutdown because I was taking affordable steps, right? I was acting, I was learning, and I was repeating the act. So I would lose $500, $1,000. And honestly, I didn't know if I wanted to start over again. Again, it was another hustle, another passion that I had. Well, this one was more passion than the other ones. The other ones were due purely to make money, and I didn't love what I was doing. So I ended up quitting or closing up whatever shop it was and not wanting to go further. But when I would close this business and people would say, man, I wore this shirt, I've been looking for you at the mall or at the kiosk. Where were you? I can't. It started to call me back, and I found more reasons than the business that called me back. I felt like a place of belonging. I felt like I was adding value to other people. You know what? I got shirts. I got my 10 little shirts. But I'm going on video sets where rappers like LL Cool J, Salt and Pepper, Run DMC are performing. I would have paid to go on that set to watch the greatest artists, as far as I'm concerned, of all times, my time, perform. But yet, when the security is kicking all the kids off, I'm like, yeah, I'm here to dress the artist, so they would kick me off last. Plus, I was hollering at all the video vixens, and I was getting free food from the craft services. So it was a win-win for me. So even if I went to 40 video sets and only 5 put my stuff in, 35 of the video sets, I couldn't wait to be there. So it was a win all around. And that's what a lot of times when entrepreneurs see that they're challenged, they find ways to figure it out because there's so many more things than just the monetary. Usually the monetary reward is an afterthought of your actions and the lessons you've learned and the drive and your dedication. And that's what I found it to be.
Did you have to get a job in between? Like you shut it down, you went and got a regular old job?
Oh my God. So I worked at Red Lobster for 5 years as I did FUBU because, at the end of the day, don't let Shark Tank fool anybody here when Kevin O'Leary says, well, I want my partner to work full time on the business. Okay, if you're doing $500,000, $1 million or whatever the case is, but, I worked at Red Lobster for 5 years and I slept three hours a night. I rented out my house that I had to strangers. So I had 3 bedrooms. I rented that out for $25 a piece, each bedroom. I slept in the sleeping bags next to the sewing machines as we were sewing clothes. In the morning from 6 to 11 a.m., I would answer at that time, a voicemail machine and sew and deliver hats. I'd go to Red Lobster from 12 to 10 o'clock at night, work a double shift, come home and then sew more hats and answer more things from 12 to 3, and then get back up at 6 in the morning and repeat it all over. But I was hopefully taking care of the mortgage by renting out the house at $25 a room. So I was getting $75 a week there. I had insurance at Red Lobster. I was taking all the fried shrimp home, all the food home, and I was making $30,000 a year, which is not a lot, but you equate that to 5 years, that's $150,000. I would have had to do $2 million in business at FUBU to do that. And I was able to last until I was able to now, increase my time from, 20% on FUBU to 80% on FUBU and 20% at Red Lobster, and then hopefully take it to where I wanted to go.
This is the real entrepreneur story. This is what I wanted. Thank God you just said that. Like, I'm so glad because just so everybody knows, like, same with me. I had a house. I was doing well. I did well enough. So I quit my job. I was full-time, my first big business. I bought a house. Then I went broke. Then I was stocking shelves and I did the same thing. I rented rooms out in my house so I didn't lose the damn house as I built my business. I just hope all entrepreneurs get a little hope when they hear this. And also they hear the hard part in there, which is like, hey, I slept 3 hours. I was psycho. So, and by the way, when people seem really smart, like Daymond does, or I have something to say, a lot of it is experience. Experience is one of the best teachers, man. And that's why he knows so much about being an entrepreneur, because he's done so much of it. Now, I want to ask you this. On Shark Tank, how many that you've invested in, percentage-wise, roughly, winners, losers, what you would consider a winner, loser? What would you say of where you put your efforts and monies? What percentage of the ones you've gone in on have been winners and losers?
So I say 30% of winners. I would say 30% of winners, 30% of losers, and 30% are still trying to figure their way out. Yep. And we happen to have, of course, we happen to have a little bit more of an upside on Shark Tank, because you look at traditional venture, it's probably 1.5% to 2% to 20%, excuse me, yeah, or 1 out of 10 are winners. We happen to have a $5 million commercial on that product and or that company when it happened. So that's why I got a little bit more of an upswing. However, my downside is a little bit more also because Shark Tank, sometimes I will emotionally invest in people that may not have the best thing in the world, but I know that the entire world are watching them. And if I invest in them, I can potentially bring them to somebody else that may be more specialized in their area and give them more help that they need. Mm-hmm. And a perfect example of that, and I don't want anybody to say, well, that's a charity. A perfect example of that is the 3 kids that came on with a cutboard product that their father had passed away and their mother had passed away, but their father passed away to 9/11 related causes. And normally that cutboard probably would not have went where it has gone, but we licensed it to Williams-Sonoma. The entire world got behind it, and it is one of the best selling products in Williams-Sonoma. So you got that healthy balance of people that really need that stage, that really need help, but simultaneously they're inspiring a lot of people around the country and around the world. So anyway, to answer the question, I got a little bit of a stacked deck when it comes to the successes, but I got a little bit more of the challenges when it comes to the challenges.
Yeah, I want to figure out a little bit from you what the winners and losers have. One of my favorite ones you did is Bombas socks. And I want people to hear about this because I had Blake Mycoskie on, who did Tom's Shoes, kind of a similar concept, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe these guys taught you something too. I'm learning, I'm turning 50 this year. I'm learning more about what I think the consciousness of the world is now in terms of the businesses people want to support. Maybe it's a little bit different than when I was a kid. You wanted to be like Mike. It was almost like you wanted to be like this hero. It seems to me now people want to be a part of something else. So tell me about Bombas Socks, be a good commercial, but also like why it's working and the fundamentals of it, so that entrepreneurs listening to this may need to sow some of these seeds in there.
Yeah, I think you hit a fantastic point. So Blake is a guest shark this year, and he definitely is the pioneer of the social causes behind things. And there's so many different things we can learn from Bombas Socks. So by the way, Bombas Socks is the number one invested product in Shark Tank history.
Really?
Number one, right? So I get those bragging rights because when you ever see those other underachievers, I call my fellow sharks, just remind them that I shared that great information with you. Mm-hmm. Now, here's a couple of things you can look at from Bombas Socks. Number one, when they came on, they were pitching socks, and the last person they should have been pitching was me, because I had 10 clothing brands and 8 of them were already dead. The last thing I wanted was another clothing brand. So I was the last one they should be pitching. But often when you're pitching somebody and or a customer, they don't know what you want until you present and package it in the right way and show a unique way of a selling proposition. But what they realized was I was doing business the old way. I was making clothes, and hopefully a retailer will buy them, and hopefully the retailer will put it on the shelf, and hopefully somebody will buy it. And if they didn't buy it, I didn't know who they were to even follow up. So they were showing me that, number one, I'm going to show you how to go direct to consumer, which we're seeing during COVID is especially critical, and that's separating a lot of people and companies. Number two, they had a social cause to it. Every time they give a pair of socks away, they would also sell a pair of socks. They would give a pair away to the homeless. Now, I'm a person that grew up in business where traditionally you gave at the end of the year, or you gave to organizations. And even when I gave to organizations, I never advertised it. I never marketed it, because why make a profit off of the hardship of others? Kind of like the people you see give away food or a sandwich to a homeless person, and they got a camera shoved right in their face going, look at me. Yeah. And they're forcing this person not only to take a sandwich, not forcing them, but to even feel lower because they're on camera, right? Yeah. So I never wanted to do that. However, that was how I worked 20 years ago. Today, with user-generated content and people wanting to get behind something, they want to look through the layers of what you're doing, and they want to tell people, not you, they want to tell people your story, right? And they feel that they can buy from anybody. So if I'm going to buy from you, what are you doing for other people? I could buy socks from anybody. So what I found is that not only they make a good pair of socks, they're very focused on what it is, but I found that, when people are on Zoom or the dinner table or Thanksgiving, they say, hey, Ed, what do you do? Oh, man, I gave away this year, to this organization. They'd be like, yeah, well, I gave to 30 organizations this year. Wow. You rich? No. But every time I bought this, I helped clean up the ocean. Every time I bought this, I helped stop human trafficking. And every time I bought this, I helped give a pair of socks to the homeless. And you know what? That is the marketing, and that's good marketing. It's cause related. And, it's really important. And so people also can get penalized if they're not doing something for you. And by the way, don't just put a rubber stamp of something that you think is good. If people will also find out if you're not, really true to what your core values are and what you're saying you're doing. So be honest about it, change the world, and people will definitely appreciate it.
That's legit. Any of you that are entrepreneurs who's giving you such remarkable advice, you got to find a way that there's some social viral aspect of what it's got to be genuine. You can't, I think people smell bullshit a mile away. And there's got to be transparency. You can't transfer to people that which you're really not feeling and experiencing. It's got to be something you really have a passion for. But if you can find a way to sow those seeds into whatever your business is, I don't care if it's a dry cleaners. If there's something that you do that it extends beyond just cleaning clothes, you're special in this day and age. I'm curious, is there some commonality that we can learn from the ones that you said were the 30% that lost, let's just say? Was there commonality in lack of effort of the entrepreneur, lack of execution? What would you say there's a common thread between the ones that have, I guess, failed?
The commonality in the winners and the commonality in the ones that didn't get where they should be are pretty much similar in some sense. There are many losers who there are many that lose and then they start over more wisely in a different area. So that means that maybe the product and or the service, the thing they had was too soon, too early, or they hit some hiccups. However, just like Daymond closing 3 times, they were able to do it, but the ones who lose and generally lose and stay in that area, unfortunately, are the ones who believe, well, the shark knows everything. And now that I got a shark, my problems are over. And if I knew everything, then FUBU would be called Nike, right? And it's not, right? So they use a shark as a crutch. Those are the ones who say, well, the reason, if I had more advertising dollars out there, then I would, or I had more money, and they don't have the orders, they don't have those things, then I would do better. Well, money highlights your weaknesses as well. If you're not moving enough product and, you have a shitty advertising campaign, well, $1 million more in a shitty advertising campaign just means you spent more money on a shitty advertising campaign, or the product is inferior, or you don't know who your direct customer is. Those are the people that tend to fail, the ones who put big bets on the areas they don't know. And those are the ones who drown in opportunity, as you want to call it, or they say, if you have too many options, you don't have enough information.
Really good. You guys know why I wanted him on now? By the way, if you go to Daymond's site too, he's got a lot of different programs. Look, here's the deal, you guys. Most really successful entrepreneurs, it's a rare combo. That you're a successful entrepreneur, I mean a real one, and you create content. Because the truth is, someone like Daymond, and I'd like to think even myself, the return on creating content and helping entrepreneurs financially isn't as good as just executing in the businesses that we have. Right. So the reason we do it is out of a sincere desire to serve people. That's what I've sensed from Daymond, and now I'm listening, I'm like so convinced of it. So he's one of the real that you could learn from that creates content. And by the way, is it The Power of Broke? Is that the one I just read? Is that the title of it?
I have Power Broke. I have Rise and Grind. The one is just out now. It's called Power Shift. I try to put power somewhere in something. I try to fix it, put it in there. Yeah.
I just finished reading The Power of Broke. And by the way, you should get all 5 books. Guys, it's so good. Like there's books you read and you're like, I'm going to highlight 3 or 4 things in here that I'm going to remember. The problem with his book is there was very few areas I wasn't highlighting. The book was highlighted. And one of the things you talk about a lot is negotiation. So when you watch Shark Tank, that's a highlighted negotiation taking place, right? But almost everything's negotiation.
Yep.
That's sales, communication, persuasion is negotiation. What are some of the nuances you could teach us, the fine points of negotiation that most people are unaware of?
There's so many things that, and I think that you're right? What separates us from the people who are successful? It's really what you have negotiated. And like you said, there are so many different forms of negotiation. Listen, trying to get the remote control away from your significant other, or getting your child to get on the school bus, or getting into the bathroom before your roommate is a negotiation, right? But you got to negotiate with yourself first in the mirror in the daytime, when you get up, right? Am I worth it? Can I do this? Why, and so here's a couple of things of negotiation. First of all, know your why. Why are you getting into negotiation? And know also in the negotiation, what are you trying to accomplish? What is your bottom line and what is your top line, right? Also, how do you build influence in the negotiation? If you see somebody like an Ed Mylett or a Daymond John in the elevator, you say, Daymond, okay, cool. How would I build influence with you in 90 seconds in the elevator? I didn't know I was going to speak to you. Well, I remember a young woman, I was in the elevator, and she told me her business, and she had the perfect pitch. It was simple. Here's my business. I know that I can add value to because this is where I think you need. And you know what? I'm willing to put some skin in the game and do this for 30 days, 60 days, a month, whatever the case is. Give me a contact over your company. And you know what? If nothing comes out of it, at least I tried. And you know what? No harm, no foul. She made the barrier of entry extremely easy for me. She had a name on her card, very easy to follow up. And she said, let me speak to your people. I'm not going to even bother you. Right. And she knew where I could potentially go in business. I go out of the elevator. I look her up on social media. Every time I see her picture, she looks great. I keep seeing this guy next to her. He keeps having the Confederate flag on. I keep looking at who this guy is. It's her husband. I go further into his page. I see that, there's some things that are very questionable in my life about what I would do. She'll never know why I didn't call her, right? Mm-hmm. She didn't have to put all that information on there. You know what I mean? Listen, whatever your political beliefs are, whatever your religious, sexual beliefs are, that's totally up to you. But what our parents tell you, if you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. And when you're putting up stuff like that, you don't know who's watching the entire world. She lost her influence after she had already had the negotiation with me. So build influence with people. Then when you go in the room, when you discuss with, don't let Shark Tank fool you. Shark Tank, the world is not like Shark Tank. Like you just said, the world is not 8 minutes of hi sharks, and then you either leave with a deal or not. You almost never leave with a deal when you first meet somebody. It's a dating process. Sure. And when you are talking to them, what's in it for the person you're talking to, not you. You got to realize that person has obligations, hopes, and dreams. Ask the right questions. You see, even when I was writing that book, Power Shift, I was Mark Cuban. He's in the book. He's highlighted. A lot of people in the book, right? Billie Jean King, Pitbull, Kris Jenner, huge people. My guy who sits next to me every day on Shark Tank, I keep telling my team, contact him. I want to get this interview together, and the deadline is coming up. He would not get on the phone, and he would not meet with people, with the writer. And my team was looking at me like, hey, Mark is not doing that. Now, I said to myself, obviously, it's because I'm much smarter and much better looking than Mark. And, he's intimidated, or I can internalize it as this guy's an asshole. He sits next to me, but is this some Hollywood stuff he's on? Mm-hmm. But you know what I said? You're probably not asking Mark the right question. Mark is somebody who publicly gives out his email. He loves text and whatever the case is. He's not dyslexic. Did you ask him, can he do it over text? They said, we never asked. That's stupid. I said, ask him if he could do it over text. Interview was done in 24 hours. Now, I could have internalized that, been offended. It's just like you walk in the room and, and like I said to you earlier, where I came from, I could have walked in the room and somebody said, oh, it's because I'm black, isn't I? No, it's not because you're black. You got a damn booger hanging out of your nose while I'm looking at you weird, right? So it's all about what's in for the other person. And then the final part of negotiation is, how do you nurture the relationship after that and let it keep paying dividends? Whether you close the deal or not, how is that person going to call Ed and say, Daymond's a decent dude, or Daymond's going to call about Ed and say, yeah, he's a good guy, or do more deals after that? And those are the processes of negotiating, and we can get way into it much further, but a lot of people mess up in those processes.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and I'm grateful that it is. I got to tell you, I get asked all the time, what's the one thing that most of the guests that have been on this show have in common? I can tell you, they're all from different backgrounds. Some of them are tall, some of them are short, some of them are from the U.S., some of them are from abroad, different ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds, you name it. But I got to tell you, most of them have been to therapy, and I'm a big believer in therapy. I think that whether you've got some real trauma you got to work through in your life, or, you just got a problem you want to work on right now, maybe you just want to talk out loud about some issues you got, or find a better quality of emotions. Big believer in therapy, and I love BetterHelp. I love BetterHelp because, number one, it's done online. Number two, if you get a therapist, you don't vibe with them, you can switch at any given time that you want to. It's a wonderful way to go to therapy, and I really believe it can help you if you have things that you want help with. So decide today you're going to give BetterHelp a shot, and stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/EdShow today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/EdShow. If you listen to this show for a while, you've heard me and my guests talk a lot about how critical it is to have your wellness goals in order, especially lately with me. So you know how powerful visualization is. When you visualize yourself 1, 10, 30 years from now, you've achieved all your goals. Ask yourself this: am I healthy at that point? In your visions, of course you are. But like anything else, without a plan to get and remain healthy, you can't hit the goal. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be partnering with Life Force. It's co-founded by my good friend Tony Robbins and Peter Diamandis. Life Force is a leader in proactive care. The Life Force membership includes everything you need to understand your wellness and help you make good decisions today that keep you on track in the future for your health. Listeners of my show get $250 when they first sign up for their membership by going to mylifeforce.com/ed. That's mylifeforce.com/ed. Take control of your wellness with Life Force and see what the healthiest version of you actually looks like and is capable of. These products and statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
I've watched you on TV all these years, and I'm thinking, she's got so much confidence and presence. This is like an Upper West Side, New York, raised with a silver spoon. That's what I'm thinking, right? And then I start to read and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's one of us. And she's had to overcome this tremendous adversity. She's one of 10 kids. She's New Jersey. Your dad wasn't the richest guy in the world by a mile. I was just fascinated by your upbringing and what you've turned your life into. Then I read, you couldn't read or write. Could you tell us?
Eventually I did.
Eventually. But as a child, you had dyslexia. I didn't know any of this about you. So let's just start out there just for a second, because I want everyone who sees this finished product, this, one of the top entrepreneurs, well-known ones on the planet, take us all the way back to little girl Barbara.
Well, after that introduction, I'm going to get myself a bottle of whiskey and start drinking at this time of the day so I could talk about it. No.
You're 2 behind. I've already started, so go ahead.
Okay, good. But you know what? All of that kind of background stuff puts a lot of emphasis on money and what money brings. And I've learned as an adult, I was very lucky having that background, being one of 10 kids, having worries all the time about how we would make do in our little house. We had 10 kids in 2 bedrooms, boys' room, girls' room. My mother and father made those kids on the couch, and we had 1 bathroom. But, when you're that young and that's what I never felt like I was short on anything, because I had a mother and father who really loved us and cared for us. And I have met so many people where my hat's way off to them because they didn't even have that. And if you don't have that love when you're younger, it's a hard one to get over. So I was doused with love. And so I think of myself as a privileged child in a real way. If you can get rid of the usual stereotype that money makes a difference. And, I found that in my life, not having money made the difference. It made me desire to have a better life. Not that that was such a bad life. It made me dream about maybe one day having a beach house or having a nice car that didn't have, dents in it or whatever, like my dad's Blue Beauty that went on for 20 years, as I recall. It made me get lots of jobs. What an asset that was. I worked since the time I was 11, as did all my brothers and sisters. We all worked to contribute to the house. And I learned what I was good at, what I wasn't good at. And by the time I was 23 and started my business, you would swear I was 53 in experience in the real world of living. I could go on, but those are meaningful ways that I got very, very lucky early.
I feel like I had that too. Our backgrounds aren't that different. Tons of love. But there's also things that happen when you're a child, I think. That's why I respect you, not because you came from, low income means to obviously you've done incredibly well. But I think sometimes when we're a kid, there's experiences where either our parents or people that we admire around us kind of project their limitations onto us or say things that they don't know might be limiting us long term in our identity or our self-confidence that end up affecting us later. And for me, I had an alcoholic dad who's ended up being sober and became my best friend, loving father. But there was always, be careful. He would always, before we'd hang up the phone, be careful. There's always this very cautious sort of thought process in our family. And for you in school, you were sort of labeled not so smart because of this reading and writing issue that you had with the dyslexia, right? Do you think that ever impacted you? Did you have to consciously overcome that, or did you just work your way through with all these jobs and just the hustle?
That in my life, even to this day, is the largest challenge. Because you said you had an alcoholic dad when you were younger. I mean, if you had an alcoholic dad when you were 25, it's very different than when you're 8 and feel so vulnerable, or 14 and wonder if you're going to grow up and be like that guy. Mm-hmm. It can be the most painful and cutting experience into the depth of your heart and your confidence and your shake of faith in life itself. They're big injuries, okay? So my big injury wasn't the same as your own. My big injury was I was a dumb kid and made fun of. And I can feel that pain till today. God forbid somebody acts like a bully to me in business. I turn into that kid getting even. I hate to say it, but it's like, I'll kill you. It comes right. It's not just a theory or a dream I have, but it's like, comes from all those old cuts around there, So I think a choice of 2 ways you could go. Okay. You could feel sorry for yourself, which is totally normal when you're a child. Who teaches you not to feel sorry for yourself? Most of us are raised by parents who are pretty good at feeling sorry for the situation, right? Mm-hmm. So we learn that. But who teaches you not to feel sorry for yourself and instead get even in your life? And what I've chosen to do, and it didn't come early, it didn't come so fast. It came out of duress, being on my feet in circumstances that I didn't envision. But as a young 20-something-year-old, I got over it. And not totally over it because I'm still an over-preparer. I'll prepare 50 hours for what someone else will prepare 15 minutes for, because I don't want to ever be thought of as stupid again. I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want anyone to think my IQ's not up there or whatever. I go through all this insecurity. So my great asset I got from that is I'm an over-preparer. And the other asset I got from that of growing up with that injury card, my biggest card, every kid's got something. Nobody grows up happy as could be, okay? But my big injury card on that is I'm out to prove to the world for my entire life that I am not stupid. because I was written off as stupid, reinforced that I was stupid. And of course I know I'm not stupid, but somewhere a piece of me still is scared about it. And that's what makes this bunny hop, Yeah. So you can get your strength from your greatest weaknesses if you have the strength to realize it, and find it somewhere.
It's absolutely perfect. I relate to it. And it's one of my favorite things someone's ever said on the show, because you watch you have this presence, you have it now. Yet, I don't know. I meant what I said. I'm reading about you and I'm falling in love with this little girl, and I'm watching. I could just picture this little girl not being told she wasn't the smartest one, and she's just accomplished these amazing things in her life. And to know that, that happened for you and not to you. One of the worst things that could happen is being labeled with a limitation like that. Your whole life, Barbara, to some extent, maybe not I haven't been with you the last 20 years, it's all the winning and all that. But prior to that, I'm like, this woman takes $1,000 loan from a boyfriend, turns it into a $5 billion with a B real estate business. But then I'm picturing this scene. I don't know, it made me emotional as I'm prepping.
You're an old softy. Look at you, Ed. You're an old pushover softy type of guy. I'm disappointed in you.
I thought there was this. Well, I think that I am a little bit. And the reason is that I
love it. I'm kidding with you.
I know I root for people, I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe people knew this. I'm watching you on the show thinking, man, if everyone knew this woman's story, I want to have her on so badly because it's remarkable. And I'm picturing you're like, I don't know, you're in your early 20s. You're with this boyfriend who gives you the $1,000 loan. I want everyone to hear this.
Yeah.
You're with your boyfriend. He gives you the $1,000 loan. You guys have built a really good business. You're doing most of it. You're doing the work, but you built a pretty good business. There's a funny name, like Simone Lamone or something like that, right?
Oh, wasn't that funny? It was Corcoran Simone, my name first. That was a battle.
What was his name, though? Wasn't it like Ramon?
Oh, Ramon Simone.
There we go. Ramon Simone. That was it. I remember. That was what I remembered. And he comes home and just tell him what happens. You're cooking dinner for his kids, right? Yeah. And what happens? And then what do you turn it into? Tell us that.
Yeah. Well, of course, he came home to announce he was marrying my secretary. I just couldn't believe my eyes. I mean, my ears, rather, I guess is what I couldn't believe. But she was almost 8 years younger than I. She was prettier than I. She had long blonde hair. I'd already made mine short. I got it in hindsight, but he told me I could take my time moving out. I took about a minute, grabbed my toothbrush, was out of there. That was my family. I was raising those kids. That was our family. We also built a 14-man shop renting apartments in the city. So we had the family at work together. We had the family at home. I thought we were buds, da-da for life, But it took me a year of a little bit feeling sorry for myself on the front end, I guess, because I thought, how could he do that to me? How could he take me by surprise? How could he? That's the pity party that's so dangerous in life. But then I tolerated that for a year. She moved into my office. They giggled together. That's what broke my heart. The giggling. He liked her so much more than me. I was like the girl in the other. Oh. So I finally, one Friday, I just walked in and said, we're ending the business today, Ramon. We're going to chop the people in half. You pick the first person. I'll pick the second. I think that was the day I grew up.
Wow.
I remember having presence. Like I knew what we were doing that day. We divided that business, seven people in probably 8 minutes. We divided the bank accounts, the receivables, the whole thing, man. I think it was $76,000 we chopped up. And then I announced to my people we were going to be in a new office on Monday. I didn't give them much time. Wow. Where are we going? They said. And I said, it's a surprise.
You didn't know where you were going. Did you know?
No.
Oh my gosh.
But I went immediately up that afternoon on Friday to my landlord and asked if he had any other space because we always paid our rent on time. And he said, yes, I have the 11th floor above the 8th floor. Same space. I knew the space. And I rented it that day. I had phones installed on Saturday. When you could do that, you could call and get business phones installed the next day. And I bought 14 desks down on 42nd Street, and those guys ran them up to Midtown. And I had everything packed that weekend. And they came into a bowed box with all their possessions on their desks. Welcome to the Corcoran Group. And that was the first day of Corcoran Group. And it happened 2 days after the last day of Corcoran Simone, But, the spirit of core in that business, the old business was a great spirit of core. They had a mom and a dad at home. Nobody knew we had marital problems. All of a sudden, dad was gone. Mom was running it, Wow. And we worked with passion because I had so little money and also my security. I didn't know it then, but I realized on that Monday how insecure I felt without my boyfriend and partner. He was 8 years older than me, a man of the world. He found me in my little town of Edgewater, took me out of the diner, told me I'd be a good person in sales. Everything that was like mature and positive about me, first time hearing things positive about me in my life, was from him. So I thought without him, I was really nothing. But even that was quickly turned into an asset because I was running scared. And you know how helpful it is when you run scared. You run hard, you know? Yep. And so that couldn't have been a better start. And also, I forgot to mention, which I always like to mention, is that Friday when I left, he called me back because he was really shocked that I moved so fast. And he called me back and he said, "Oh, you, Barbara?" I said, "Yes, Ray." I said, he said I could call him Ray after a few years. He said, "You'll never succeed without me." I couldn't believe he said that to me. I would rather kill than let him see me not succeed. And I can't tell you, Ed, how many times that came into my head at the tough times when all of us build businesses. You know, you go forward, you go back, you go forward, you go back. You think you're going to go out of business and you stay in business, you save your neck, it goes on and on. But each of those worst moments, I would think about him laughing at me. It's terrible. He wasn't going to laugh at me, I doubt it. But I picture him go, and it would shake me up. And I think of another new idea to try or something else to do, or something. And that would always just get me around that next corner. So I really had the gift of insult walking out that door. And I think if he had been lovely and mature and said, "You know what, you're phenomenal, you're going to do fine without me." And that was asking too much because I had just hit a broadside, as you know.
Yeah.
But I think I maybe wouldn't have stayed in business. I think it would have made the exit in the beginning a little bit more graceful versus vengeful. And I realize I'm very good insulted. I also discovered my strength, you know?
Yeah, well, I think finding the leverage that gets you going. I think sometimes even when we start to have some success, I mean, why do you keep climbing? You know, some of you that are achieving, that are doing pretty well too, can you still find the reasons? We were talking about the football helmet behind me from Brady before he went on. She's got an Emmy behind her. I have a football helmet from another guy. But someone like him that he keeps finding. Yeah, I would. Tomorrow.
If the football player comes with the football, I'll do a swap.
I can't throw that one in, unfortunately. I can throw in lunch with me. But I got to tell you, it's finding that leverage you get on yourself. It's hearing those things that you're not smart, you're going to fail. It's feeding it to you in a way that it energizes you and not taking those things to bury you in your life. That I think a lot of entrepreneurs go the other direction, they were right. They were right. Every time there's evidence that something negative happens, rather than getting that bowing your spine, so to speak, and battling through. I also see this competition thing with you, it shines through you. The thing I wanted to ask you about, kind of as a little side road, because you're a woman. And one of the things
last time I looked down, I was, yep.
Yeah, but I'm stating the obvious for this reason, that you were one of the first women really women were already doing well in sales, and right now they dominate the sales space.
Yes, they do.
But you were the woman owner also of a business. I just like you to speak to maybe women right now that are out there that are on the fence a little bit about, should I start a business? Should I move into ownership in my life? Do you think there's anything unique that a woman brings to the table? And do you feel like there's still a shortage of female entrepreneurs out there?
Listen, being a female, for me anyway, when I was building my business, was an asset, or at least I saw it that way. So it was. I was in a male-dominated business. Every shop was owned by men. The development field, the brokerage field, owned by men, usually second, third generation wealthy guys. Okay. And there are big companies. So it seemed insurmountable. All right. But it was worked by women, and that wasn't lost on me. 90% of the sales force were female. We didn't even have the gay population yet as part of the New York real estate scene, which today in brokerage they're very tremendous force in brokerage. Okay. Yeah. So we had it worked by women, owned by men. Okay. I could see the asset of that. I could see that if I was a girl telling the girls what to do, why would they object to that? Would I have more empathy for them wanting to go home with their kids, being spread thin, having 4 jobs when their husband had 1? I understood that because I was of them. Okay. So I was able to build a spirited core that I'm not saying couldn't be done by a man, but no one really did it. Because they weren't cut out of the same cloth. So they were part of me. I was their mom, they were my kids. And that was my attitude and feeling from day one at that business. They were my kids, and I would kill for them in the same way I would kill for my own kids today, my real kids. And that gives you a big calling card. Now, to your other aspect of your question, lest I forget it. You said, what do you say to a woman who's working, like particularly in a man's field, pulling ahead? Yeah. You have no idea what you're missing until you start your own firm. If you're wired to be an entrepreneur, no idea what you're missing when you're not free to make the walls your color, to choose the people, to make the policy yours, to decide what stick is in the sand, which mountain you're going to climb. When you're in charge, anyone, any individual in the world, put them in charge and you will see what they're made of. I remember in my business, I was running the company, but I knew where I wanted to go. I knew I would need top management eventually, even though I couldn't afford it and didn't have enough size to have other people running offices. But I remember from almost the get-go, I would go away for 2 days, say, don't call me. There are no cell phones. Don't call me. You're in charge. I would choose a salesperson. You're in charge. What do you mean I'm in charge? Whatever you decide is okay with me. Don't call me. Make any decisions you want. Mary's in charge. Everybody, Mary's in charge. Wow. What I discovered in the first 25, 35 people I had potentially 5 or 6 phenomenal leaders, good managers. They didn't know they were managers, but I test drove them all the time. Throwing people in charge. So if you can take charge, not only of your office as a manager, you usually find your gifts that way very often, but if you could go the extra step and be in charge of your destiny, what you do with your life, 9 to 5, every day you decide, what power and what a delicious, delicious luxury it is in life. To be able to make your world what you want it to be. It's magic making, So you can't get me to too badly, because I wish everybody could be entrepreneurs. I think there are certain traits that are dominant in entrepreneurs. If you don't have them, you're not going to make it. But I do believe if you are so inclined to have those traits, that ability, you're like missing so much by working for the next guy. I would rather kill myself than work for somebody. That's how I feel. That's how dedicated I am.
You can see it on your face when you talk about it. You said wired earlier, and then you said these traits. And I think I get asked this too, and I don't know that I answer it very well. So I'm curious what your answer is. What are some of those traits? I'm sitting here, I'm driving in my car, I'm on a treadmill, I'm watching this on YouTube, wherever I am listening to this. I'm like, I want to be an entrepreneur, or I am one, but I'm still not totally sure I should be. What are a couple of those traits in your mind that are just, you must have these or you shouldn't be one?
I believe front and foremost is competitiveness.
Wow.
I've invested in a lot of businesses. I have to tell you, there's not one really successful one where the principal isn't fiercely competitive, and I don't mean competitive like I want, like Saban and Jim of Cousin Maine Lobster, they're equally competitive. It's not like I want to be the biggest lobster brand in America. Not that kind of competitive, but Luke's did what? Luke's Lobster opened out of the shop. The horns come out. Whether they wanted the shop there, whether they wanted the city there, whether they even had an interest, but their competitors there, whew, it's like a fast fuse. My most successful entrepreneurs are sickly competitive. I know for myself, I used to compete for things in my field that I had no interest in, just to show them that I could get it. That's sick. I needed to shrink. Not a job, right? But it's a wiring that you hear, that growl in you, that you want to be competitive. And I think that's the number one trait. I think the number 2 trait, and if I only had to narrow it to 2, and there's so many things you tap into when you're an entrepreneur, you've got all guns ablazing. But the second one, I would say, is that you have to be able to get back up fast. Everybody, gets a hit and feels badly, and you have a lot of excuses to rest a bit and stay low, or make yourself right. He told me he was right, whatever. But I think it's the ability to just like get in the habit of getting up. I am such in the habit of getting up. Like I'm almost, not really, but almost at the point now where somebody slaps me around, I don't feel it. Because I'm so much in the good habit of getting back up. And interesting, if I could add, even though that wasn't your question, I'm going to throw it in here. It's interesting how often I'm asked by parents how to build a child's confidence. If only they find something they're really engaged in, if only, I believe parents can very much help children find their thing by getting them in the habit, trying things, failing, and getting back up. And you can control that. Force your kids to go back out and try. Back up at that, try at that sport if you're not going to try at that sport. Oh, you can't do your homework? Try harder, go do it again. I think that kind of building a habit of trying is where all children get their confidence from. And as dumb as I was in school, man, I was not allowed to coast. I was shoved out back and back and back and back and back. So I didn't think that lying down was an option. I got in the habit. And what an asset that was as an adult to have all that practice as a kid. I had an advantage, you see? Yeah. So I think I answered your question. Maybe not. You ask it again. I think I dropped a piece of it on you or something.
It's so good. And it's interesting. I have to tell you, because I've asked that. I would like to have a different answer. I got asked that a couple months ago at a speaking engagement I have, and I said the word competition. I said the word compete. Because when I was done, though, I wasn't so sure that was the one thing. But we just did this new podcast deal, and I'm starting new businesses, and somebody I asked the other day to my friend, I said, why am I still... I'm doing all these things. I said, what is, do I need a shrink? Like what you said.
You do need a shrink. Yes. Don't get one. You won't be as profitable.
That's what he said. Almost verbatim. He goes, Eddie, listen, dude, here's the deal. You're competitive. You want to, and also you're competitive with yourself. You want to see how much you can expand, how much you can contribute. And he said, you'd be dead just sitting around, man. Like I told him, I said, I live here on the ocean. I'm looking at the beach. I said, I have not put my feet on that sand in like 4 weeks. He goes, you get out there, you find a way to do it, but you're competitive. And I actually enjoy doing this more than I do just sitting there. It doesn't mean I don't like to rest. It doesn't mean I don't like to, recuperate, but I like expanding. I like contributing. I like growing. I want to compete. And so I completely agree with your answer. And this has been a trend with you. So now I'm like, okay, how's she get on Shark Tank? You have the exit in 2001, bunch of money. And then I think you're going to get the show.
Yes, I had the show. They hired me. Yeah, I signed the contract.
They hired you, and then it was like, maybe not. You got it. This is amazing. I mean, think about this. What's happened to your brand, to your reach, to your influence? I mean, this one decision, we're one decision away from altering our life, right? One little competitive psycho streak in you. So tell them what happens. You get the show, and then what?
Then I get the call from the Mark Burnett's assistant. And same woman who called me in the first place saying, I'm sorry, the show's changed its mind. They've hired another woman for the lone female seat. I couldn't believe my ears. You have to remember at this point, I had already bought Hollywood outfits, going to sign autographs. I had done my movie going. I had new leather luggage. Wasn't going to be plastic in Hollywood. It's going to be leather matching luggage. Awesome. And so I was already there. I told my friends, I'm going to Hollywood. I'm going to Hollywood. So I was mortified more than anything. Honestly, the first thought I had is, what will my friends think? What will I explain? I hate to be that shallow, but I really thought of that. And then I hung up the phone. I couldn't believe it. I had to shake my head. But then I did the thing that's more important than anything else in life, which I had learned to do, get back up. So I got back up and I typed out a very brief email to Mark Burnett, whom I hadn't met, and called the assistant to promise she would deliver it to him because I didn't think he'd read it, And she said she'd walk it over and promise that he'd read it. And I told him I consider him to be my lucky charm. All the best things in my life happened on the heels of rejection. When Sister Stella Marie told me I'd never learned to read or write, she was wrong. I learned when the big boys in New York said I couldn't compete, I became the number one rival. When Donald Trump said I'd never see a penny of the $4 million commission, I collected every penny in federal court. I just went right like that. Yeah. And I said, I'd like you to invite both women out to compete, and I expect to be on that plane on Tuesday. And what do you think happened? He invited us both out, and thank God that was 13 years ago. To pointing again to the power of not being so smart and not working so hard, or all the rest of the stuff you have to do in life, but the power of getting back up. Just take another swing. By the way, Ed, what was shocking to me, I was not so shocked I turned it around because I was used to turning things around. What was shocking to me is my Clay, my producer. 2 weeks after that, we were on Shark Tank. He said to me, we hired 4 times more business owners than we needed, and we rejected 3 out of 4. He said, and not one wrote an email. I was like, what? No one objected? So I got to see purely for writing that email, not because I earned it or I had good luck, but that email got me that seat. No doubt.
That is just amazing story. And by the way, not only did you respond, I was going to give you everyone just a paragraph of the email. Not only did you respond, but you did it in such a way that just had a level of certainty. I think certainty. I
was faking it.
I love that though. But certainty is influence. She says, Mark, I understand you've asked another girl to dance instead of me.
Great opening line. Even I laughed at that one.
It's so good. It would get your attention. You would laugh at it. And he says, although I appreciate being reserved as a fallback, she says, I'm much more accustomed to coming in first.
Yeah, that's another good line. I might say so again.
It is. It's just, I got to say, guys, I mean, there's moments that define our lives. And do we get back up? Do we compete again? Do we dig deep? And these things may seem sort of hokey. They're real world things that end up deciding whether or not you've had a pretty successful life or you're one of the most influential entrepreneurs on the spinning earth, which is what Barbara's become. Isn't that amazing? And I think it's just remarkable. Now, someone pitches on the show. I'm curious. What are you looking for? In other words, is it the business model itself? Are you evaluating the jockey or the horse, or is it both? And how do you end up reaching a determination like this is at least one I may be in on? Or can they say one thing and you're like, I'm out? Is there something in particular you'll notice where you're like, I'm out?
There's a few hot buttons. First of all, I really form a first impression before they ever say a word based on how they look. They're standing in front of the sharks slower than us. They're intimidating. Come through the doors. They're standing there. They are told not to talk until they're asked to start. So there's this long silence while they set the camera shots up close in their face. Very intimidating. Mm-hmm. And I watch how they handle the pressure. Okay. So when somebody's falling apart, looking at the ground, shifting, can't handle that pressure, I just am out right away. I mean, I can't say I'm out, but I know I'm out. No matter what they say, that it would be digging out of a hole. I just can't really believe that this would be a strong business partner. Okay, that's one. I do pay attention to the model to the degree that I say, hey, will enough people buy this service or product? Mm-hmm. Is there a need for it? And will enough people buy it? And if it seems, reasonable, I'm okay with the business model. All the details that we go into, the margins and blah, blah, blah. I'm honest to God, as a dyslexic, I'm asleep on the wheel. I'm often making a shopping list while it's going on because I can't hang in there to pay attention. Okay. But I already have formed my opinion on the very important piece. Hey, does it make sense when enough people buy it? Now I'm just watching at the person and just thinking to myself, could I picture them as my business partner? Do I like them? Do I trust them? And if I do, there's one last question. Do they have enough energy to make it to the finish line? Because I've never met a successful entrepreneur who didn't have a ton of energy. So if they don't have that energy, I think they're going to run out of gas. Now, I could be wrong. Who really knows? But I know in hiring people my whole life, thousands of people, when people don't have high energy, they're never great. So that's like a breathing test almost. So that's kind of the summation of it. And then you have to hang in there for another 45 minutes before you can say I'm out and make up another reason why they're out. Because you don't want to say to everybody, I don't like your energy. You're not competitive. I don't like the way you look. You have to come up with something more businessy. And I spend the rest of my time trying to come up with something more businessy that makes sense for the show, Businessy. I love that. I do that all the time on this show. Let me sound more businessy so I can just fit in. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.